Welcome to the many interpretations of Diplodocus. Diplodocus was a sauropod that lived in the late Jurassic of what is now North America. One of the most notable things about them is their overall length. They are one of the longest dinosaurs that we know of, with a maximum length of around 26 meters or 85 feet. Certainly no slouch. Of all of the Morrison Formation sauropods, which, there's a lot of them, these guys are probably some of the most popular, and that's of course thanks to some of the documentaries and other projects that they have shown up in. So in that same vein, we actually have a decent amount to look at, so let's get right into it. Starting off all the way back in Fantasia. This was, of course, released all the way back in 1940, and it shows, look how outdated this portrayal is. It looks like a giant sprawled stance belly dragon long-necked lizard, essentially. So there was a point in time when it wasn't believed that sauropods could really support their own weight on the land. So it was thought that they had more of a sprawled stance and they would drag their bellies around, or they spent a lot of their time in the water, which is something that would help them support their own weight. Of course, we now know that wasn't the case. If, their skeletal structure doesn't seem to allow for something like that. And of course, in terms of the land-based belly dragging locomotion, we have found Diplodocus footprints that lack the little small ditch that they would have left behind if they were dragging their bellies. So this is certainly outdated, in that way. It really reminds me of really old reconstructions of these animals that portray them as giant lizards, which they're just so crazy to look back at today. Everything else looks pretty all right, though. It looks like it has the proper diplodocid skull, and it has a long neck and an overall huge body. So I'd say it's a pretty good depiction for the time. Moving on from that, we have the land that time forgot. We have this really cool Diplodocus up here that has more of an upright stance. So of course we are moving forward in terms of reconstructions. It has a really long neck and a really long tail, which is true. But look how low it's holding its neck. So the exact posture of Diplodocus is a matter of debate. I think that they're still going back and forth with it. There's many who believe that they held their head a lot more down, like closer to the ground, and there are those who believe that they were able to hold it a lot more vertical, just hold it higher in the air. This, of course, has it portrayed lower to the ground, and it's actually dragging its tail, which is something else that we know they didn't do. That's also very lizard-like. Not much else I can say about it, though, but it's a really cool older depiction. Probably the most iconic one that we'll see on this list is walking with dinosaurs. This one, I think, helped make Diplodocus a household name. And its design still remains iconic, so much so that I feel other people who designed Diplodocus try to emulate this to some extent. It has a really cool solid coloration. The neck looks pretty good, and the tail looks pretty good. The head also looks pretty good. Diplodocus and other diplodocids have this kind of elongated skull with very strange teeth. Like they don't have teeth throughout the rest of their mouth, only the front of their mouth. I don't know why I'm doing it like this. There'll probably just be an image up. But those teeth, those were perfect for stripping leaves off of branches. See, they could like bite onto a branch and then they could just strip it off, and then they would be able to swallow it, and then they likely would swallow these rocks known as gastroliths, and those would grind up the plant material that they swallowed, which is all around very interesting. It's also portrayed with these spikes, or these spines that kind of go down at the middle of its back, starting from the base of its skull. Now, we've never found these on Diplodocus specifically, but it is still possible that they had them because close relatives of Diplodocus have been found with them. I believe that they're mostly keratinous, so that's why they would be difficult for them to preserve. But this is still in the realms of possibility for the animal. But anyway, it is also portrayed as being incredibly long, and the tail is a lot more whip-like, which is true. There was even a recent study done like a couple of years ago that went to go and tackle the question on whether or not diplodocids like Diplodocus could crack its tail like a whip, and the conclusion was it couldn't. It would break its tail. But it likely was still able to use its tail as a sort of weapon. It just couldn't break the sound barrier with it. In The Lost World 2001, this is still very much the Walking with Dinosaurs Diplodocus, which makes sense because that was done by Impossible Pictures, and this was done by Impossible Pictures. But it does seem like there are a few tweaks to the design. Like on most of the models I see, they lack those spines that go down the back, and it overall seems a lot thicker in the neck, which I think looks really cool. But the colors remain consistent, and the overall basic model remains consistent. Oh, and the babies. The babies look really cool too. I forgot to mention that with Walking with Dinosaurs. I love the way that the babies looked in Walking with Dinosaurs, and I think they look really good here too. In Dinosaur King, we have Seismosaurus, which is a sauropod that is now synonymous with Diplodocus, so I figured I'd include it. I don't know if Seismosaurus shows up in too many other projects, so if I missed any Seismosaurus appearances, be sure to let me know. Anyway, it has a really cool blue coloration. The head looks really good, the neck looks really good, and the whole body looks really good. There's not too much else I can add on to that. I quite like this one. Oh, and also the teeth seem proper too. Really cool. Next up is David Attenborough's Natural History Museum Alive. So in this documentary, what they do is they take the skeleton known as Dippy, which is one of the most well-known Diplodocus specimens, like skeletons. Like, it's incredibly well complete, and it kind of offers the best insight of what this animal looked like when it was still alive. But they take that skeleton and they of course animate on top of it. They make a whole model. The colors are still pretty reminiscent to Walking with Dinosaur colors, but everything else seems to match up pretty well because of course it's simply just using Dippy as a basis and just going from there. So I think it looks pretty good overall, and I don't really have too many complaints. The feet are a little bit more elephant-like, which is not really consistent with Diplodocus feet, but all around, it's still pretty decent. After that, we have Life on Our Planet, which is a pretty significant jump from the previous one. I think the previous one, the David Attenborough one, was released around 2013, and this one's over a decade later. So I might be missing a few projects in between in terms of documentaries or movies. So if I am, be sure to let me know. But this is as far as I know. Anyway, Life on Our Planet, I love the way that their Diplodocus looks. That really kind of tan coloration that's been pretty consistent overall. It does have the spines going down the back, which still is likely for the animal. The skull looks pretty good. I mean, I should clarify, I don't think we've ever found a Diplodocus skull, specifically for Diplodocus, but we've found other Diplodocus skulls, and they all remain pretty consistent overall. So it's likely that Diplodocus had a similar skull to those fellas. Their neck posture kind of goes all over the place. It remains a little bit more horizontal, and sometimes they're able to raise it up. Again, that is a matter of debate on how exactly they held their heads, but it kind of like portrays them in a few different ways. Also, this shot is awesome. I'm not the biggest fan of the Allosaurus design in this show, but this shot is sick. I love it. So I think that Life on Our Planet is another pretty good one. Diplodocus also has a brief cameo in Bluey, where Bluey says that the password is Diplodocus. So there's that. We'll go ahead and move on to the Jurassic franchise. Of course, Diplodocus has yet to show up on the big screen, so I'll just go ahead and start off with the toy, the Colossal Collection, I think, or the Legacy Collection, rather. I love this one. I think it looks so cool. It has those spines going down its neck and back. It's got a basic kind of brownish coloration with some whitish stripes and a more black head. I think the head itself looks good. The shape of the head and that tail, it looks awesome. And it starts off really thick and it kind of thins out towards the end of the tail and becomes a little bit more whip-like. I love this figure. I think it's really cool. Wouldn't mind having it in my collection, but I certainly have to be picky and choosy about which ones I decide to purchase. But I still think this one's really cool. Now, it doesn't show up in the movies, of course, but it does show up, of course, in video games. Like in Jurassic Park 3 Park Builder, we get this nice kind of orange coloration with those spines that are really spiny right here, really spiky. The tail looks good and the head looks good. It's holding its head up a little bit more, which is really cool. So all around, I think it's a very good depiction. Seismosaurus also shows up in this, and as I mentioned before, Seismosaurus is synonymous with Diplodocus, so I'll include it. Very long neck right here, a very long tail, and the whole body has more of a gray coloration. In Jurassic World the game, we get this one that's, again, holding its head a little bit more vertical, which I still say would be in the realm of possibility for the animal. It does have the spines on its back, but they seem to end right as it's getting onto its neck. So that's interesting. That's a little bit different from other ones we've seen. It does seem a little bit more robust than Diplodocus would have been. Diplodocus, as I mentioned, was a lot longer, one of the longest dinosaurs that we know of, and this does seem like it's a little bit shorter than it likely would have been in life. But I like the way that the head looks, and yeah, I think that's pretty good. And then you get to level 40, and it mostly just exaggerates the colors and the spines. It makes it very, very spiky, and the colors are, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of something. It reminds me of something, some type of ice cream, I suppose, is what it kind of reminds me of with those colors. But all around, not bad. Also, their nostrils are seemingly closer to the correct position. Diplodocus, their nares, which are the openings for their nostrils, are about towards their head, like towards the back of their head. that isn't where the nostrils would have set. Rather, their nostrils would have been set a little bit closer to their mouth, rather. At least that's mostly the consensus. And I think that most depictions we've seen have properly done that. They haven't had nostrils on their head. Now we have Jurassic World Evolution 2. And overall, I think this is a very good depiction. You can, certainly see a lot of the influence taken from Walking with Dinosaurs, which honestly, Walking with Dinosaurs was overall pretty close to our general consensus of the animal, so that makes sense. I really like the posture of the head. I like that, of course, they have these, these spines going down the back. The tail looks really good and properly whip-like on the animal. The head overall looks pretty good, although the nostrils are raised up too high. These nostrils are set basically right where the nares would be. The actual opening for the nostrils would have been a lot closer, probably around here, maybe even closer to the mouth. But I do really like them in this game. I think that Frontier did a really good job at portraying them. I think it's overall a pretty solid depiction of Diplodocus. In Jurassic World Alive, again, it seems a little bit shorter than it likely would have been. I don't think the feet look too bad, and the colors look pretty cool overall. I quite like these colors. The spines are present, head looks good, tail looks very short, but overall not too bad. In Jurassic World Aftermath, now I haven't talked about Aftermath too much. I actually played it a little bit back in the day, but there is a Diplodocus skull, or at least a Diplodocid skull. I can't remember if it is Diplodocus specifically, but it does show a very good depiction of Diplodocid skulls with those very interesting looking teeth that are just towards the front of the mouth. So strange. I love it. Then we have Ark. Now, it does have the proper length. Like, the length looks really good on the animal. The whole body looks pretty all right, and those spines are present. They're a little bit more sparse on this one, which gives it an overall more jagged appearance. And the head looks pretty all right, too. It really kind of emphasizes those weird-looking teeth, which honestly isn't too far off. It looks strange on this fella, but it's not too far off, all things considered. And I really wasn't able to find too many more video game depictions of Diplodocus, so there's a good chance that I was missing some, but I might just be spacing them. That could. Oh wait, I forgot to check Fossil Fighters. Let me try that. Yes, there is a Diplodocus in Fossil Fighters, known as Diplo. It seems like there's there's this one right here that looks interesting. I really like how those interesting structures kind of jutting out on its tail and on its head and on its back. It really kind of looks like a Pokemon to me, which looks just so interesting. Then there's also Seismo, which of course is synonymous with Diplodocus. But it looks pretty cool. It looks pretty consistent with most depictions that we've seen. Actually, kind of seems like a baby Diplodocus, so you gotta love that. So yeah, those are all of the video game depictions I was able to find, and most of the on-screen appearances that I was able to find too. It is possible that there are some more out there that I just haven't found, so if there are, be sure to let everybody know in the comments below. But that's pretty much all I have for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and you like dinosaur related content, please consider liking and subscribing. Thank you so much to all my patrons and my channel members. You guys are really helping out a lot, and until next time, have an awesome day.